Engineering marvel, the unique architecture of the Incas. Inca architecture contains some of the most finely crafted stone structures among all ancient civilizations. Inca buildings were almost always practical and aesthetically pleasing. Moreover, they were remarkably uniform in design, with even larger imperial structures taking on a similar appearance to more modest buildings, the main difference being their larger size and quality. Sci Explore Hub. A characteristic feature of Inca architecture was its attempt to preserve the natural landscape's shape and build accordingly, often creating a blend of geometric and natural forms. Let's examine the materials used by the Incas for their construction projects. Stone was the material they used the most and finely crafted to create precise arrangements in the finest parts of the buildings. There were three types of stone: UK limestone, green saxawamandiyarite porphyry, and black andesite. Each stone block could weigh several tons. We're not entirely sure how the Incas worked the stones. We know that most buildings required immense labor, with Sacsayhuaman Fortress alone requiring around 30,000 people. The Incas didn't have wheels, cranes, or lifting devices. But markings on the stone blocks indicate that they were mostly pounded into shape rather than cut. The blocks were moved using ropes, logs, poles, levers, and ramps. Telltale marks can still be seen on some blocks, and some stones still have nodes protruding from them or indentations used by workers to grip the stone. The fine cutting and precise placement of the blocks on site were so accurate that mortar was not needed. Finally, the finished surface was often provided using grinding stones and sand. It's also evident that the stones were roughly hewn in the quarries and then worked on again at their final destination. This is evidenced by the unfinished specimens left in the quarries and on various routes leading to the construction sites. The precise process of fitting and interlocking the blocks was slow, but experiments have shown that it was much faster than scholars previously thought. Still, it took several months to complete a single wall. The interlocking blocks and slightly sloping walls made Inca buildings extremely resistant. 500 years of earthquakes have caused barely any damage to Inca structures. These stone formations are a characteristic feature of Inca architecture, often described as zigzagging masonry. Such design of Inca walls, where the stones fit tightly together without any mortar, requires exceptional precision and planning. The stones must be precisely shaped not only on their upper and lower surfaces but also on their sides to fit perfectly with neighboring stones, and they are individually crafted, with no two pieces alike. This means that each stone must be worked and tailored separately to fit into its place. The Incas carefully observed the shape and structure of natural rocks and shaped the stones following the natural contours. This meant that the stones were not shaped into regular forms but followed the unique lines and curves of the rock. The stones were carved in such a way that they interlocked, meaning the protrusions on one side of the stone matched the indentations on the adjacent stone's side. This interlocking design increased the structure's stability and resistance to earthquakes. The stones were shaped to form precise angled polygons on their sides, which fit perfectly together without the use of binding material. The precise fitting of these polygonal-shaped stones was not only important for aesthetic purposes but also crucial for the durability and stability of the structures. The accurate fitting helped the buildings withstand weathering and earthquakes. Utilizing their basic geological knowledge, they favored the natural fractal lines of the stone, making it easier to work with. This allowed the stones to remain stronger and more stable even after shaping. The architectural layout attests to the mathematical and geometrical knowledge of the Inca engineers and masons. The placement of the stones and the design of the joints likely relied on preliminary mathematical calculations. Various tools were used during their construction, such as chisels and hammers made of bronze or harder rocks, to shape the stones into the desired form. The exterior walls of the Incas typically slope inwards as they rise, usually at about 5 degrees, giving the building a distinctive trapezoidal shape. The trapezoidal form is more commonly applied in the north and center of the empire, and one of its optical effects is to make the walls appear higher and thicker than they actually are. The trapezoid motif is repeated in doorways, windows, and interior wall niches. Doorways and windows often have double jambs, with the former usually adorned with a large single stone lintel. Don't forget to like and subscribe to our channel so you won't miss anything. Architecture in the capital and the imperial buildings scattered throughout the empire were very similar in design to other more mundane structures. They were, of course, often much larger in size, and the quality of stone work was much higher. By employing curved walls, they could be more ambitious in design, and they could be decorated more lavishly, for example with gold sheeting, as at the sacred Coricanca precinct in Cusco, whose curved wall section survives in part today. The name Coricanca means golden enclosure in Quechua. It was so named because its walls were covered with gold sheets. When the Spanish destroyed Coricanca, they tore down the temple and its adjoining buildings, stripping them of their gold and silver. In total, more than 3,000 pounds of gold were removed from the walls. Every important Inca settlement had an ushnu, which symbolized the Incas' dominion over the empire. The ushnu served as a type of viewing platform for processions, important state-sponsored ceremonies, and judicial proceedings, and it was located on one side of the main plaza. Another characteristic of towns were the gateways, which often provided monumental entrances to the cities, with one of the most spectacular perhaps being the main gate of Quispaguanca, with its 2-story tower and 3-door jambs. Hillside terraces, like buildings, were made either of loose rocks fixed with mud mortar or finely cut large stone blocks. They could extend the land available for agricultural production and provide better water drainage and runoff for plants. But sometimes they were merely decorative and planted with flowers. Those terraces at Pisac and Ollantaytambo are amongst the most impressive, and their design has a definite and planned aesthetic effect. Even rock outcrops were carved into functional forms by the Incas. For example, at Sacsayhuaman, a throne-like carving with steps was cut into a stone hill. Sections of smaller rock outcrops could be cut into geometrical shapes or designs such as zigzags and rectangles, their exact purpose unknown. Such works also purposely exploited the play of light and shadow to give a further geometrical dimension to the natural landscape. Rooms were also cut out of natural clefts in rock, one of the most famous being the temple shrine of the sun god Inti beneath the Torian Tower at Machu Picchu. Urban planning was a crucial consideration for Inca architects. Main roads often cut through cities at angles, as seen in Huanaco Pampa. Entire city zones were built in alignment with the central square and its ushnu, with royal residences typically facing sunrise. Sometimes, entire cities were planned to resemble specific shapes when viewed from above, the most famous example being Cusco, designed to resemble a puma. Another important aspect for Inca architects was positioning buildings, doors, and windows to take advantage of the best views and to align with astronomical bodies and events such as certain stars or the sun at solstice visible through these portals. For example, at Teotihuacan and Machu Picchu, there was a stone structure used by the Incas to observe and record the movements of celestial bodies, particularly the movement of the sun across the sky. The unique arrangement of the structure allowed them to precisely monitor changes in the shadow cast by the sun and correlate these with changes in seasons and other natural cues. On another level, Inca architects often sought to harmoniously integrate their strictures with the surrounding landscape. Perhaps the most famous example of this is Machu Picchu, which followed the contours of the hillside and even incorporated natural phenomena like large rocks into its buildings. Sometimes, the outline of a sacred stone or building was designed to mimic the contours of distant mountains. Of course, Inca architecture still holds many unanswered questions, waiting for someone to uncover the answers. Perhaps you'll be one of the viewers who finds them. Thank you for joining us on this exciting journey, and remember, science and history always inspire us to make new discoveries. Don't forget to share your own thoughts, ideas, and theories in the comments. We're very curious to hear from you, and we'll be delighted to read them. And if you haven't already, don't hesitate to subscribe to our channel to stay updated on future exciting content and discoveries. Thank you again for your attention, and see you in the next video.